So good morning and welcome to the Human Biography Podcast. On today's episode, I've got Chen Lizra. And Hen, welcome to the Human Biography Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me today.
No, my absolute pleasure. Now, I met you probably, I feel like it was like 15 years ago, maybe, originally in Vancouver. Would it be that time? Is that right?
I don't know the exact time, but it's around that time.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we've known each
Crazy,
other for
isn't
a
it?
while. Absolutely. Well, you know what? Time passes fast. And, um, I have to say, I've been following your journey and I want to share some of that journey. And we're going to talk about that today. But where are you today? Now, tell me whereabouts in the world you are. Yeah.
I am right now in gorgeous Lisbon in Portugal, probably the most feminine city I've ever been to. I have to tell you that one of the things I love, love, love is that at nighttime they don't have white lights, they have orange lights. And
Wow.
when I investigated, and which makes the city so romantic, and then when I investigated why they're yellow, a good friend who lived here her whole life because she was Portuguese said to me that they used to have these sticks that they would go with to turn this light with, like it used to be fire, which is
Yeah.
why they were yellow. So when they retired the sticks and the fire, they decided to put the kind of light that would imitate the fire. That's why the whole city is orange. I've never been to a city like this before. It's just absolutely stunning.
So it seems like it's very romantic and very, very beautiful.
It
Very,
is.
and which we'll talk too about alluding to your work. But I want to talk since it's very interesting. I shot an interview with you many years ago about your work and your life. You had done an amazing TEDx talk that went viral globally, which we can talk more about. But I want to talk a bit about I want to talk about your perspective on your journey. Like, and let's go back to that. I want to talk about where it started, your journey. And then we're going to get to where you are today, and we'll go into the future. But tell me a little bit the starting part of your journey and your early influences in your life to sort of start off the conversation. Yeah.
Well, when I think of that interview, it kind of brings two things up. One, it's like, man, that was a long time ago, and that feels
Uh,
almost like another human being.
well, it's
Like
interesting.
it's
We've both been doing our work for a long time, and it's
Mhm.
really nice that I get to come back and revisit that story and see where it's culminated and where it's gone. So that's beautiful. And yeah, it has been a while. It's been a while.
it's been a while, and something is that at the time, because I was doing so many interviews, I was living in Vancouver, and I was doing so many interviews, and someone said to me, "My God, like Shard got out of you something that no one ever did." Like that's
Mhm.
what someone said that knew me well. He said, like he showed a whole other aspect of you. And it's really interesting because it's true, first of all, but when I look at it now, I go like, oh my God, who is that person? It's like
Yeah.
because I mean, I've evolved so much since then that it feels like seriously, like that was a really big exposure at the time for where I was. Now it feels like, not your work, me, me and how I show up. Feels like, really? Like, did I show up like that then? Like, you know what I mean?
Well,
Like the evolution of time.
it's good to look back, or like it's good to look at who we are, go to look at what our motivations were and how we got to where we got to. But it's like there's no path, there's no clear path, there's no clear path.
Yeah.
And so I
And
want
I
to
always
talk
say,
about
I have to throw in here because I always say, I wonder what Madonna thinks when she sees Like a Virgin now. You know what
yeah,
I mean? Like with the
yeah.
evolution that she's gone through, what does she think about Like a Virgin now? And it's kind of the same feeling, I guess. When I look at that, I go like, well, it was what it was at the time, but when I look at it now in the context of time, it's like Madonna looking at Like a Virgin.
Wow. I saw her in concert, and I have to see her evolution as a human. First of all, she's an incredible performer. Love Madonna, and what a show! But also to see the different genres of music throughout her time. It's kind of like we all have a best hits album, right? And we're
Yeah.
just playing those best hits, but where are we? What is our latest and greatest? And so,
Yeah.
but let's go back to your greatest hits and too, and let's talk
All
about.
right, let's
Yeah,
go.
tell me about your influences and your journey early on to where we are today. Yeah.
Well, I think I really want to go really to where it really started,
Yeah.
which is really my childhood. And I just came back from a trip to Peru to study with Mother Ayahuasca, and
Wow.
there was so much that I got to see. I mean, I know the stories, but it was like a whole other way of seeing what happened. And I think that this is the biggest influence of what I do today is that my mother got mentally sick when I was 11 years old.
Yeah.
And I mean, this is something that I've already spoken to. And I said, my mother got mentally sick, my mother, but to go back and really understand that fracture of what happened there. I was 11 years old, and I think this was the first time now that I got to see the full picture and really feel it in my body. I think that for the longest time, I couldn't even go there and really feel it completely. It was so massive that I could feel pieces of it, but not all of it together. And just to kind of explain what I mean, so my mom started to kind of degrade in having she became bipolar, so she started having manic attacks,
Wow.
and we were living with her, and she was losing control, and it started to get worse and worse and worse, and I think it was about half a year of her kind of losing control till she started hurting us. But not because she was a bad person, because she would lose touch with reality. And there was, I mean, when things got to the craziest stage, she almost murdered my brother in front of my eyes by mistake, not knowing what she was doing. And that night I was in bed for 3 hours, just crying and shaking. I was terrified in bed. Like, I was just so afraid after seeing what I saw. And she couldn't touch me because I was like this and crying and crying. And my dog is like big dog. He was
Wow.
like licking my face for 3 hours till I passed out. And after that, I don't know exactly how many days, whether it was a couple of days or a week. They submitted her to a mental hospital, and they came
Wow.
and they took her. And I went to school in the morning, and I came in the afternoon, and there was no mother. She was gone.
Wow.
And no one sat me down. No one explained what was going on. No one came with me home to find this. My dad's head was cut off of all the pictures we ever had in albums. So it was like the whole house looked, from to me, looked wrecked, with like photos everywhere. My dad's head cut off. I was super scared. I was just 11 years old. And it was a lot. It was a lot. And I think that it's kind of interesting because, you and I talked about it, about the fact that it was also a different time.
Absolutely.
And there was such, turns out that my dad even didn't even know about what was going on. We were telling my grandparents as a child. I thought, well, if you tell the grown-ups, then everybody knows. But turns out that they were so ashamed
Mm.
that they were hiding it. My dad
Yes.
didn't even know what was going on, which is crazy. So then, as if that wasn't enough, like they took my dog away because my dad was terrified of dogs, and we had to move in with my dad. And it was like such a breaking point for me because I was so close to him, and he was the only thing that was left as comfort.
Yeah.
And if that wasn't enough, um before she was taken away, she was so out of touch with reality at that point that she forced me to put every night my dog in the car and lock him up, this big dog, in the car, and he was just like crying all night. You go like the whole night, and he would cry in the car, and I would be in bed, and I would cry, and I would just want to let him out, and I couldn't because she wouldn't let me. And one day she told him to put him in the car, and I he just started weeping. Seriously, it was like, and my heart
He knew
broke.
that he was going to be alone. Yeah.
It was so hard, and I burst out in tears and angry, and I was like, I can't do it, I can't do it. And she was in a nightgown, and she stepped out, and she pulled her nightgown, and she was completely naked underneath.
Wow.
She just screamed in the whole neighborhood, and she went like, "Do you want everyone to see my vagina?" And she's just standing there with the gown up, with her vagina out, and everybody came out, kids, parents, everybody, and saw her vagina. And I was in so much shame, I didn't even know where to bury myself. Next
Wow.
day I come to school, I was the joke of the school, an outcast. So it was so much shame and fear and pain and sadness that my body of I had the body of an 11-year-old. I
Yes.
couldn't handle it. It was too much. So the suicidal thoughts started. I got from this PTSD. This is where the biggest break happened. So and that's ultimately what kind of led to everything that I'm doing today. That was the beginning of that.
Wow. Can I want to go back there because there's a story there of a memory and a few memories. But what did that, I'll say trauma. How did that trauma live in you after?
Well, I think a big trauma like this, it's such a huge trauma. I've been working on it for decades, and
Yeah,
I'm in an amazing place. But even now, I'm still working on it because there are so many pieces to it. I
absolutely.
don't think, and I always say that in my company, I'm the guinea pig. If anything works on my
Sure.
trauma, because it's such a big a big trauma, if it works on mine, it will work on most of the traumas that I work with. Um, it impacted a lot of things in my life. Um it took me a long time to rebuild trust,
Yes.
to be able to lean again. Like leaning was such a difficult thing for me. Leaning took me a couple of, like, I think 2 decades to correct. It was so hard for me to lean because when a parent like that disappears in you and you're really dependent on them and they're like they vanish like that, how do you trust in leaning someone and not being afraid that they're going to disappear on you? There's such an abandonment there. So that took a long time, for example, to repair. There's so many moving pieces to this that it affected, I think, every area in my life, and it's the curse of it because there's been such a high price that I paid, but also the gift of it. Because the one thing that I will say that's really amazing is that when something becomes so, let's call it broken. I don't think that we're ever broken. I think we're hurt and we can heal it. But a lot of people use the word broken. When you feel so broken and you work to heal it, what happens is that you're getting the better version of yourself, like the highest version of yourself. That's so
Yeah.
much more accurate. And sometimes when I look at people around me, friends and other people, clients, I see how people like sometimes settle for what they have because it works. But I get to choose something that's really phenomenal because I go like, well, I don't want that. So if I change it, I can decide to keep going and make it better and better and better. Do you know what I mean?
It's a great outlet. I mean, because I'll tell you, when I met you, you had so much confidence. You were, I
Mm.
remember you were living in this divine feminine, looking towards Cuba. I remember, so I knew a strength. I knew you as a very strong woman, and I still see that of you. And as a friend, I did not know what things had happened in your past. Only recently we've had those conversations, and then also the resolution of going through this, this plant medicine journey through ayahuasca and rediscovery of yourself. um I want to talk about that confident woman that I met, who was talking about Cuba, and there's dance involved. Your TEDx talk was amazing. Can you tell me how we went from where that strength came from? Where did that strength come from? Yeah.
Well, I think to begin with, I had no choice but to survive.
Hmm.
When you're so young and you lose your mom, and I did not kill myself. I had to survive.
Wow.
And I say that I'm a little bit of a walking miracle considering everything that happened to me in that sense. But I also have to give
Absolutely.
credit.
Yeah.
My dad was the one that he worked at 3 jobs, and he's the one that held the base. There was like things, the basics were covered in that sense. He made sure we had everything. And my grandma, I think, kind of saved me with her love. The way she loved me is the way I hold space for clients today. She had
Yes.
this unconditional love for me where no matter how I was feeling about myself,
Yes.
she always saw me as the person that I am today. There's so many moments where I have her photo here, I have her photo here on the wall, I have it on my fridge, and there's so many moments where I think of her and I just kind of connect with her. I go like, I hope you're proud, because she always looked at me as the person that I am today. And if I didn't have that unconditional love from her, which was also very affectionate and very much, physical love. She would hug me and she would kiss me and she would give me so much physical love. I don't know if I would have survived it.
Wow.
And so that was one piece of it, and then having to survive. Like I had to keep going constantly. I didn't, the first 10 years, like after that, I don't think that I did well. I think I was with constantly suicidal thoughts, and I was hiding them from the world because I got rejected too many times and I was too afraid to show the truth. But over time, I started working on myself. And the first place that I went to at 20 and a bit was to Japan. And I
Yeah.
lived in an old traditional dojo.
Wow.
And I learned Zen Buddhism and meditation and mindfulness. And one of the things I've learned in Japan that was so powerful for me was to disconnect from the world and society. We didn't even have social media at the time. So you were really in the moment. You know, you had to pick up a real phone and call somebody. There weren't even cell phones at the time, but you were really there when you were there. But it was about much more than that. It was about going inward to listen to your inner voice. And I sat there and I meditated, and I had questions, and the answers came the more I meditated.
Yeah.
And sometimes we're so afraid. This is what I've learned when I was in Japan doing that, is that we're so afraid to step away from what society thinks. We're so afraid to step away from what the family thinks, or, so, and here I was, and I stepped away and I kind of locked in inward, and I started to meditate and be with my truth and to let go of the fear to hear my truth. And as it became really crystal clear, I knew what I needed to do. And
Mm.
this is, by the way, how I've made probably my biggest decisions in life. I would go to like a Buddhist monastery, and I would meditate in silence and then look for the answers. And ayahuasca is very much for me the same. It's like I just came back from the jungle, and I was like no internet for a week. I was with the plants and learning and listening and just making decisions. And I think it's so important for us to be able to hear that inner clear voice and be able to
Yeah.
shut out all the noise and just be right here.
I have to say, like, I recently went to Japan about a month and a half ago, and we have so much to learn from that culture, from a North American standpoint. It was, the food, I love the food, but I have to say, like, we don't normally visit so many temples. Like I do maybe in India, but not really. But purposely, there was temples everywhere. There's a place of refuge for people to really just be calm, look at the nature and all that kind of stuff that we were doing. And we purposefully chose to do that. And it was quite magnificent. And I think there's something about nature. There's something about a place of solitude that sort of gives you the more idea of how to be present. So I think that's also how society's trying to go that way. We see it on social media. Everyone's got their mindfulness quotes and all that. And I myself um, have always been quite spiritual, but I've actually been paying more attention to that. And I think we all kind of need that. So I exactly feel what you're talking about. You know, can you describe, like, you talked about the healing from your grandmother. Can you describe how you create that healing environment for yourself and for others in your work?
Before we go there, I want to
Uh,
bring one more piece, which is really important
Absolutely.
because you mentioned it, which is Cuba.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
we
So
have to have
go to Cuba. Absolutely.
we
Yeah.
have to have
That's on my
Cuba
note.
there
We talked
before.
about
Yeah,
Cuba
yeah.
when we first met. Yeah.
Exactly. Before we jump into what the today, I think that missing piece is really important. So,
Absolutely.
fast forward, there's, I mean, obviously many stops along the way, but Cuba was a huge one for me because,
Yeah.
they say in Spanish, they say if Cuba calls, you should pick up.
And
And
I
Cuba,
thought you might have had a, like, maybe you were from, when I met you, I thought maybe you're from Cuba, maybe because you had this like flair. And I remember my wife and I, we had gone to Cuba for our honeymoon 22 years ago, or whatever odd number that was, and it was an amazing place. And when I met you, I was like, oh, okay, you got this Cuban vibe, but you're like, I'm not Cuban. I'm not Cuban. So how did Cuba come into your life? How did Cuba come into your life? Yeah.
well, let's start with the fact that it started from the dance because
Yeah.
I was dancing. I was dancing for so many years, and it was always something that was in my blood since I was young. I was a gymnast, and I loved dancing, and I tried many different dances, and it was always like a year or two. And then when I got to the Cuban stuff, it was like, that's it.
Wow.
Like, I'm parking here. And I stayed in it for like 16 years. I just moved to a new dance for the first time after like 16 years of dancing only Cuban. And at the beginning, I thought that I was really good at it. And
Yeah.
then, I got to the point to go to Cuba, and I was so like, I'm ashamed to even say that when I found the level in
No
Cuba.
shame in the game. You got to try. You
No,
got to
I
try.
understand, but
Yeah.
it was like, oh my God, I call myself like someone who dances Cuban style. So then I committed myself to traveling every year and really learning the
Wow.
authentic way of doing it. And I was like, I got to do it justice.
Yeah.
And I launched in Canada the Cuban Dance Academy that I had. And I think that at the time, there was something that drew me. And at first, I thought it was the seduction. but it was so much deeper than just the seduction. There was something that I was learning in Cuba through the body, through the embodiment that was in the dance, that
Sure.
was also healing a part of my trauma. And when I got to Cuba, I was already in a, like, when you met me, I was already in a great place because I've done a lot of work. So it wasn't like, oh, wow, you were hiding your trauma. I was actually in a good place in my life already. But still, like, what I've learned over time is that trauma is held both in the mind and in the body. And it's like
Wow.
I healed the mind, but I didn't really heal my body. And there was still things that were held in it. And I didn't really know how to release it, but I could feel it. Something was still bothering me, even though I was okay and my life was functioning. And in Cuba, what I was doing was, like, just by learning dance and learning how they embody themselves, was healing part of my trauma. And I was like, what is this? And I started investigating it. I was like, what do they have here? Like, what is this like magical thing that I feel in my body? Like, like, what is that? What do they do? How do they have it? How do they embody that? What does it give you? So for 15 years, I was investigating what they have and extracted those somatic elements and turned it into the method that I now call the 5 elements of somatic intelligence and teach. And really, like, started to go, like, I was like, would that work anywhere, on any culture, on anybody? Like, and started testing it afterwards in different cultures, on different people, and seeing that it works internationally. And really what it was is that there were elements in their culture that got conserved due to the fact that they were sealed like a little capsule in time, away from materialism, away from production, away from running fast. They stayed in the moment in a very mindful kind of way, which connected to what I experienced in Japan. And they couldn't have material things, so they had to look inward for the things to fill them up, to give them
Yes.
joy and make them happy. And they learned how to release, for example, endorphins and oxytocin in the body. And you'd go like, whoa, I feel amazing. And I go out and I go back to Canada, I go like, man, we take so much for granted. They have
Yes.
nothing material. We're like in Disneyland of options, and we're miserable compared to them. So that even made me more interested in this, which led, by the way, to the originally to the TED Talk, which was about seduction. I was talking about all this like seduction and the way they attract, but in the seduction, really, there's the elegance of being yourself, the possession of yourself, and that.
Elegance of being yourself. Wow.
Yeah, and that pride of being you. And when you come with that pride, is that it's this mesmerizing confidence, and then the intention of going after what you want. Like, what is it that you want in life? And then having that power. You talk about my strength. So, having to correct what happened gives me so much power, because it's like intention is not my weak element. Let's say that. And then you have the tempo, which is that joy of life, which you've probably experienced in Cuba, so much joy of life. The sabrosura is the feminine divine energy. And when you feel it in the body, like, for a woman, she would feel gorgeous, just like you're in love with yourself. The same for a man. If he connects with his sabrosura, which is more the femininity, he'd feel really, and if he's got a lot of intention and elegance in body, he'd feel very handsome. And it's like,
Yeah.
that. And then the mystery, and the mystery is where the seduction lives. But really, the seduction doesn't work without the rest of the elements. You can't be, for example, feeling like this and then being seductive, right? But if you're here and you're feeling like in your elegance and intention, then you can seduce, right? So it's all the elements that come together, and that's really our true nature. That's
Wow.
really when we're our whole self.
Happy self and whole self.
Yeah.
And then I do want to go into your work and how that progressed from Cuba. And so, what was your path after Cuba? I want to, because like you're in Portugal now, and I want to hear about
Yeah.
that.
So
And does place, and I want to ask you this, does place, the place that you are, wherever you're traveling, does that also transcend to where you are in your life as well? You know?
in what way do you mean that?
Well, right now, like, when I met you, you were in Vancouver. And
Mhm.
experienced a lot in Japan. You experienced a lot in Cuba, and then now you're in Portugal. And does place change who you are or enhance your work?
Hmm.
Does that change as you go to different places?
I would change it a little bit around from what you were saying.
Sure.
It's not so much that it would change who I am
Yeah,
and just who I am. And
exactly.
especially with the way I'm living my life, I think one of the things that I hear a lot from people that come and work with me is that they say, I really love your authenticity. I really love that I can feel you, you're who you are, what you see is what you get. I think it's more a matter for me of, think of like, let me give you a good image. Let's say you now wanted to plant something in, you wanted to have a plant in the house and you're taking these seeds and you're sticking them in, but then the soil doesn't fit together with the plant that you chose, then that plant is going to die, right? When you put the seeds in the place that has the right soil, suddenly it's like flourishes, flowers come out, whatever it was. I think that for me, that's what it's about. I mean, I can be in many different cultures and learn how to live in them and to respect the culture and to be around. But there's places that just feel like, wow, my roots can stick here easily. Portugal, for example, is one of those places that I just feel so at ease being me. And I don't need to change myself to fit into the culture. And it's just so I'm at ease. And if I'm at ease, I'm also more feminine because if I feel that I'm in a culture that doesn't accept me for who I am and I have to change so much of me, I feel like I'm hardening,
Mm,
so it's more like I have to protect myself from the constant attacks of somebody wanting me to be something else. Whereas an environment that allows me to just be who I am and I can feel that people love me for who I am because it's very natural to be the way I am here. I'm very direct. I say what I think, I'm not politically correct. It's the but today, someone outside, I was here in my office and I hear like honking and screaming, and I come out, and it's not a very typical thing what happened today. It's actually quite extreme for Portugal because people are very soft. But this woman is outside and she's screaming and she's giving the fingers to people. And it's like getting into her car, getting out of her car. And then she's just standing to like piss people off and people are honking. It's like, now again, I don't want to give Portugal a bad name because this is really not typical. But I was like, what the hell happened there? Like, but the way she came out and was so vocal, you're not going to see that in every culture, even though that was an extreme situation, like
absolutely.
people. So that's it.
I want to talk about um, the work that you do today. I want to talk about the work that you've done for yourself, but also the work that you do for others and
Mm.
your work with others. Can you tell us a bit about that and get into that? Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll start with the work that I do today.
Yeah,
So let's first explain what I do today. So
absolutely.
today, I started the company in 2018, which is
Wow.
unbelievable. It's been a while. And what we do is help people heal trauma from the body. So again, like I said before, there's a part in the mind and there's a part in the body. And we understand much faster through the body than through the mind, right? If you say to child, don't touch the fire. Don't touch this, it's going to hurt. If they've never had the experience in their body, the felt experience of what fire is, no matter how many times you say to them, what do? They go touch it because they don't
Absolutely.
understand what you mean that it's going to burn. Right. And then they touch it. And then the parent gets mad. Why did you touch it? I told you that because they don't have the felt experience. Once they touch it, they're not going to touch it again because you tell them, don't touch it, it's going to burn. They already know what that means. Right. So when we feel something, through the body, we understand faster than through the mind. How many times do you know that someone explained to you something and you go like, okay, I understand what you're saying, but that still doesn't change anything, right? We say that a lot when we're working on ourselves. I understand what you're saying to me, but I still don't get what to do with it or how to change that.
Right.
But when you feel that change through the body, everything changes too. For example, we are doing coaching, we're doing group programs for healing trauma, we're doing practitioner programs teaching practitioners how to do it with others, we're doing retreats, we're doing many different things. When I'm with a client, for example, and they come, I'm just going to give an example. They come with an abandonment. Something happened in their past, in their childhood, and they got abandoned. And as a result, they're always so afraid that someone's going to leave them. They're so
Right.
afraid to be left alone or they're afraid to be abandoned. And you can tell them a million times that they shouldn't be afraid and that was in the past and it's not in the present. That doesn't change it, right? But if I sit with them, and let's say this is a coaching client, specifically one on one, and I'm connecting my nervous system to theirs, and now I can feel what they're feeling. They always go to me, how are you feeling this through the internet? Like, as I tell me, you're feeling pain right now in your heart. I go like, how do you know? I go like, I feel you. Like, but you're on the internet. I go like, you still feel a person through the internet. But
Yeah.
now I'm helping them kind of land deeper into the emotions that are there that they're typically escaping. So when something happened to us, we lock that area because we cannot process by ourselves what happened. The same as when I said my body as a child was too young to be able to be with so much pain and and fear and sadness and shame that I had to shut certain areas down to protect myself. If not, your nervous system would fry. Like imagine a voltage that comes in is way too strong. What happens to the bulb? It burns, right? So our nervous system, if we're lucky, if we didn't end up in a mental hospital or addicted to drugs or something, shuts down those areas to protect us. And
Yes.
then we need to open them back, but we cannot do it for ourselves because we shut them down because we couldn't process it. So now someone has to help us come back to it and to be able to process those emotions. When we get closer to those emotions, what happens are two things. It's either we constantly escape to the mind, we're trying to analyze because we want to control the situation, we're trying to get away from it because it's so scary to feel what is there, or we go numb. We
Yeah.
just we feel nothing. Suddenly it's like you're disconnected,
That's
right?
right.
Now the trick is to basically bring the person. Oh, and there's a third option, which is like you get close to it, but then you like people will say, "Oh, I'm getting all dizzy," right? And that's like your body signaling that you're coming close to a trauma, and you need to know how to come into this. So now, if I can guide you and hold you in the sense of, energetically, be there with you, the same way that my grandmother loved me, right? She held
Sure.
me emotionally, and I can now be with you, and I can feel with you, and I can help you little by little drop into those emotions. So you're coming closer, then you're escaping, and you're coming closer, and then you're and like help you little by little in that process to kind of lend into it. Ultimately, what happens is that you come back to yourself and you're here,
Mm.
that disconnection. So a lot of times where even though we're here and the body is here, we're disconnected. So now you're landing back into it. And as you're being received emotionally in those places where you're by yourself, when someone wasn't there to feel with you,
Yeah.
and your body is feeling being felt, what
Mm.
that creates is that it restores those places and you suddenly feel what is possible for you. What was not possible becomes possible. Why? Because you feel it through the body. You're coming to a place that was unsafe, and now you're feeling safety in that same place, and you're feeling the emotions. And what happens is that the emotions will kind of start processing and then discharge from the body. And there's be like different times when it discharges. And ultimately, what it does is correct that experience to the point that you can let go and suddenly not run to the abandonment. You can go like, oh wow, I can trust again. Oh wow, I can open up again. Oh wow, I can love again. It's not a process that takes a second. It's not a switch.
Yes.
I'm doing right now a program of 10 weeks teaching how to heal the body. It's phenomenal. Like we've after half the program, we did a check-in. We love checking to see how our clients doing as we're going because we want to be able to correct things as we're moving. And we were checking in to see how everybody was doing. And they already felt after 5 sessions healed between 1 and 10, 5 to 8,
Wow.
which is quite amazing, in such a short time. But it's a process, it's work. It's like, and I keep telling them, like, some of them are saying, well, but my issues are still here. I expected it to be resolved by the end of the program. I go like, unrealistic expectation. We cannot heal so fast.
And everyone
But
is
if
different. Everyone is different, right? You know?
well, it depends on what you're coming with, right? If the trauma is pretty deep, I'm not talking about things that are light, but I'm talking about traumas that are pretty deep that have been there sitting and they're trying to fix them for a long or to heal them for a long time. It's not going to be super quick. It's going to take some time and some work, and it can be truly healed, but we need that patience and to give it that time and to trust in that process, and it will happen.
Mm.
So I think that one of the things that I keep saying is, and I think this is my biggest motivation for this is it took me 2.5 decades to figure out what works and to get to like a really amazing place. And I go, why should we have to wait 2.5 decades? And why should someone else have to run around the world like I did, like to the Amazons with the shamans and to try this one and to try that till I figured out what works? And there's very few things that I found that work. But once I knew what they are, I was like, that's what we need. We need a company that offers that so that people could do it. And, in coaching, we do it in 3 to 6 months. And in a group program, probably like you do it in about a year instead of 2.5 decades of the same thing. So I really want to make sure that we save people, we collapse the decades into months and years.
Can you tell me about the programs?
Yes. Which program do you want to know about?
Well, yeah, you developed them, and I'd love to share that with the audience here, and so they know how to access, and it is eligible for both men and women. It's very inclusive of all that. So I want them to know that that's opportunity for everybody. Yeah.
Yes, and let me say something about that because we are advertising for women. And the main reason that we're advertising for women, even though we can work with men and not a problem, and we've worked with men, is because no matter what we were advertising, like 90% were coming women. So we decided to advertise for women. But
Sure.
when men come and they want to work with me one on one or in programs, they're welcome to come.
We are
Absolutely.
evolving. We are evolving slowly but
You
surely.
are.
Yeah.
Absolutely are. So the programs, so we have the program, the coaching one-on-one. And the coaching one-on-one is the process of both the embodiment and witnessing, although we always start only with witnessing because the embodiment is so powerful that it brings to the surface everything that's incomplete. And you want to have first the ability to process before you're flooding yourself with all these things that come to the surface. So we always start with the witnessing to learn how to process and release and to create the emotional foundation and the resilience. And it's also important to understand that when people work with me one-on-one, one of the benefits is because I had to reconstruct myself completely in 2.5 decades, I really know how um, to really kind of guide in how to create new boundaries. Or sometimes people come and they go like, wow, I don't know what to do with my boss, and I'll do role plays with them, and I'll get them to have more confidence and to be able to speak and teach them about communication. So even though I'm saying I'm doing a witnessing, there's usually a lot more. And I kind of help them reconstruct the way I did. And it's like, it's really amazing, amazing when I see the results. I have a client who just came back. And at first, she was so afraid to speak up with her boss about all these issues. And we've been working for a couple of weeks. And I mean, I'm so proud because it's like you have to see she's rocking it now. She had tough conversations. And she came and she said, like, I couldn't have done it without what we're doing. And I hear that quite a lot. So that's the coaching. We have the healing through somatic intelligence, which is basically a program where you're coming with your trauma and we help you heal the trauma. And what I'm doing there is I'm kind of creating for them, it's kind of cool, an engine of healing. So I'm
Sure.
putting them into
Wow.
small groups and I'm teaching them the process, the basic process, not at the level that they need to do it in my level, but the simpler version of this. And then I'm teaching them how to do it together. And I'm kind of guiding them through the program and answering their questions and making sure so they can continue when we are going to the embodiment. They're still working on, and we're going to finish the program. They're going to keep healing. They don't stop healing when the program stops. So instead of having to take another program with me for that, they're going to continue on and they have a little engine for them.
Wow.
And which is really quite amazing because, and we're checking, we're seeing how things are going in programs. We had, for example, in the groups, we had one group that had some traumas conflicting. So we separated them, we changed that. So I think one of the nicest things we heard from this in the feedback is that they said, we didn't realize that you're going to be with us so much, you and the team, like really being with us, really checking how we're doing, really guiding us every step of the way. And they said, and we didn't expect to do so much work. So it's a program where you're working, but as
Everybody's working. Yeah.
you're working in that program. But as you're working, your life is also really changing. Like
Wow.
by the end of that program, life is not going to be the same. So we give you a lot of work. You come in and you work, you commit to it, but by the end of it, you'll see also the results. So that's one of the newest programs. And then there's the group witnessing program, which is such a profound program. We have the most incredible people taking it, which is basically for practitioners and leaders that want to learn the process of witnessing in order to work with their clients or in their work or with their families. We have surgeons coming in, we've got coaches coming in, we've got therapists coming in, we've got business owners coming in, and it's such a profound program that again they're in small groups that continue beyond the program, but learning those skills and then using it in their lives is just incredible because we need this wisdom to continue beyond what we can do. And it's
Yeah.
only if we pay it forward that we can really grow it to something that I hope one day is going to be a world thing, like and a big scale, not just me, but everybody. Like you teach this and this and this, and they keep teaching. There's a ripple effect, right? And then there's the retreats. So there's the embodied femininity retreat that we're doing. And
So where
that's
is that happening?
Cabo Verde.
Okay,
Cabo
where's that?
Verde.
Sounds
is
beautiful.
an island I didn't even know about
Okay.
until I got to Portugal.
Wow.
It's an African island just off of Senegal that's Portuguese. Like they speak Portuguese there.
Wow.
It's magic. It's magical. Like it's
Sounds
like another
magical.
type of
I'm sure it
Cuba,
is.
I found me another type
Sure
of
it
Cuba,
is.
basically.
Well, it's one thing to do work.
And just to add one more thing before
Yeah,
I
please.
let
Yeah,
you
please.
take over, is that now I'm working on a new retreat, which is going to be taking people to do the ayahuasca journeys in Peru. So we're going to have two different retreats running a year.
I'll say this, Uh, I've done certain plant journeys before. I've tried that, and it's been quite magical and interesting, and a lot of learning. I've never done ayahuasca, but I've heard a lot of beautiful things. Been invited. Timing is always a thing, and so when it's time, it's time. But also, I think there's something to be said about, you mentioned the island that you'd be going to do at one of the retreats. It's about the space around you, not just the interaction of what's going on with you or the person who's the practitioner or the person who's actually working with you. It's the environment that's around you. And I think a lot of the time, when we are going through trauma or we're going through areas of battle inside our brain and our hearts and our souls is that we do need a change of space around us. And I think there's something to be said about having a retreat with people that actually can bring that out in you. So I'm excited for people to experience that. How do people access this and how do people get involved with this work? And I want to hear more about how we can, people that are watching this and beyond who will be watching this can get connected to this and have these opportunities. Yeah.
So the first thing is to just come to the Power of Somatic Intelligence, like so powerofsomaticintelligence.com, and that's the easiest way to find us, to
Okay.
send us a message through the site, to register into the programs. We're going to now start open information sessions. So
Beautiful.
we're going to do them once a month, so people can come and just try and see what we're doing. Just come bring like we're gonna have in when you register into them, like to have a question, say like, what questions do you have for us? Like if you're interested in the program, you don't have to register by the end of it, but if you're interested in joining something like that, you absolutely can come and hear a little bit about it, but also ask all your questions and get a feel for it. If it's the right timing, great, join us. If it's not, you can join the mailing list and stay in touch, and then when the time is right, we've created this amazing community. So the way my grandmother held space for me, we created a community where when you come in, this is a closed community on Mighty Network that only clients can come into. And when you buy a program from us, whether, we have the Somatic Intelligence Wisdom Academy, so it's 343 a year, and you get access to all the
Oh,
pre-recorded
wow.
programs and you can come in there. For example, we have a $17 embodied femininity challenge for women to start to kind of experience what we're doing. We've really created like, from the smallest to the biggest. When people come into this community, they suddenly enter a space where you're allowed to really be you
Mm.
and show the truth. And I think
Wow.
that this is one of the most healing things is that when people, I had a client that signed for a program and the next day she fired all of us one by one, my whole team.
Wow.
And I jumped on a call with her because I knew that her trauma got triggered. She got
Wow.
really scared. And I got on a call with her and she was saying this and saying this. And I gave her, time to kind of come down. And then I kind of showed her and she was like, but I have big emotions. There's not going to be room for my big emotions. I started laughing. She was like, why are you laughing? I said, because everybody comes to this with big emotions. That's the whole point. But don't worry, we know what to do with it and how to hold space. And to see her now towards the end of her program and how much progress she made. And she was like, I'm so glad I didn't run.
Mm.
This is what I've done my whole life is that I come and I touch and then, I get scared and then I run. And then we stopped her from running and then she stayed and now she's doing so much better. And it's not like it's necessarily easy. She has to meet herself in some places that are very, very difficult with some emotions that need to be
Abs-
released. But life is finally changing and being able for all of them to come to this community and show the truth. You know how many, I think this is the other thing we hear all the time is that they go, once I'm here and I hear everyone's stories, I realize we're all going through the same thing. We're just hiding it. But when we bring it out and there's such a space where someone, this is what they think about themselves and this is what they feel about themselves. And it's like, and all of it is out. And then we go like, okay, let's see we in a program we look at where the root cause of it. Why are they feeling that way? What's the trauma? And then we start to heal that, something changes. And I think that one of the most beautiful things in what we do, and it kind of goes back to what you said a second ago, is that we are not just into heaviness, and we don't stay just in the trauma. And like there's this is the whole aspect of Cuba. There's joy and fun. And this is like the Cabo Verde retreat, for example, it's about embodied femininity. After you've done the hard work and the heaviness, now let's go and do the fun part, the
Mm,
light part. And we pick
wow.
I pick places that are the environment. You're absolutely right. The environment is a huge part of the transformation. So in Cuba, it was the perfect place to teach at the time, you know, about the femininity and all the seduction where you're like
Sure.
the culture is like that, and everybody relaxes into what they're feeling. Cuba kind of fell apart in that sense because we lost our whole team, and I got tired of rebuilding because every time something happens in Cuba and there's a crisis, everybody leaves, and then I have to, and I was like,
Oh,
I'm done. That was why we did not go back to Cuba. And people still ask me, "Are you going to go back to doing retreats?" No, I'm not. I'm tired of rebuilding. But now that we're doing it in Cabo Verde, one of the reasons why I picked Cabo Verde is because they have a saying, you can see it here in red. It says no stress, and it's no stress Cabo Verde. As soon as you get to Cabo Verde, it's
nice.
like no stress Cabo Verde. And there's something, they're super charming. And it's like no stress. And that's the perfect place where you want to learn about
Yeah, yeah,
embodied
yeah, yeah.
femininity.
Because it's
You
already
get
stress. You're coming with stress, right? I want to say, I feel like, seeing the journey of your life in all the different places, it's kind of beautiful that you've taken the best parts of everything and you've landed in this beautiful place, right? And it's so great that through your work that you've done inside and you're constantly evolving in all the things that you've learned and what you're taking back is that you're now offering it to others. And I want to thank you for that. I want to thank you for that because there's a
oh,
lot of people that will try to still figure themselves out. And I'm sure you are constantly growing from all the things that you've learned. But from when I first met you to today, and it's, from one interview to like this next interview, how many years later, it's great to see that evolution. And I'm so happy for you. And I'm so impressed that you are still helping people. And not just on one side of side of the world, but the other side of the world. And it shows that everybody needs this, right? Everybody needs this. So how do people connect with you and how do people find you?
so they can, first of all, come to our site, parasomaticintelligence.com, and
Great.
just
Share that.
email us or message us. They can join the programs on the site. There are certain things that you can register into. There are certain things you can book calls with. They can always find me on Instagram. That's the platform I like to be. So
Great.
come, join, come
Yeah.
check out all the stuff. We have a beautiful YouTube channel with amazing videos where we set up all the covers.
Content.
And
Hey,
I also wanted to leave a little gift for everyone. So I created a little gift for the women, and it's under what is it? Hold on, I forgot the shortcut.
I'll
It's
share the site. I'll share the site. Yeah.
okay, femininetruenature.com.
Cool, great. I'll share that with everybody. And I wanted to thank you. There's a lot of things that we do in life that are a learning for ourselves, but when you are of service to others, there's something about miracles that happen within yourself and for others in that interaction. And I just wanted to thank you for being part of those miracles for others, because
Oh,
a lot of healing that you've done in your life is going to heal many others. So I thank you for your time and
oh,
energy today. And it means so much to connect so many years later in different continents, but just to know that your story continues. So I appreciate that. Thank you so much for being.
oh,
Yeah,
that's amazing. Let me add one last final thing because of what you said just now. I think that that place that you talk about, it's like it requires always going inward so deep to continue the investigation to be able to show up. As I'm doing my journeys in ayahuasca over the years, and I've been doing them, I've
wow.
done my third retreat already. And a shamanic abuela, grandmother, said to me, "Sanas una mamá, sanas una familia entera. You heal a mother, you heal a whole family." And I feel that as we touch a soul, each soul that we touch, we there's a ripple effect of who else is touched by that person that's healed. And I am so truly honored when people choose us, because I know that it's really scary for a lot of people to meet themselves. And there's so many people are jaded from what they've experienced in the world and what happened. So when they come and they give us that trust and they let us see their most vulnerable, tender places and help them with that, that's truly a privilege. So
Oh,
thank you so much for letting me tell my story today.
thank you for allowing me to share it. I want everyone to know that when we do these dialogues, that there's an evolution that happens within us in the moment, and I feel like I've learned so much from you, and I look forward to our next conversations and see how you keep evolving your work. So thank you so much.